Welcome and thank you for participating in this webinar on the approaches to utility resilience, creating an energy sector that is prepared for the unexpected. Please note this webinar is being recorded and all participants are muted with their video turned off. My name is Elise Vors. I am a Senior Program Coordinator at the United States Energy Association on the Energy Utility Partnership Program based in Washington, D.C. To give a brief background on USEA, we are a nonprofit membership association of public and private energy-related organizations, corporations, and government agencies. USEA represents the broad interests of the U.S. energy sector by increasing the understanding of energy issues, both domestically and internationally, through capacity building activities and events like this one. If you would like to learn more about USEA and our work, I welcome you to go to our website at www.usea.org. Today, we will be looking at how utilities around the world have been adapting to these rapidly changing times. For the past few months, the world has faced hardship and uncertainty amid a global pandemic. Despite these challenges, utilities in the energy sector have worked hard to keep the lights on and provide reliable electricity. Our partner utilities in Colombia, India, Serbia, and Uganda will present on how they are ensuring reliable electricity production and delivery, protecting revenue streams, and adapting their operations and policies to these rapidly changing situations. We will begin this webinar with a short presentation by each of our speakers and then move to a Q&A session. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button below. We thank you for your participation and support of our activities, and we look forward to you joining us for future events. I now hand it over to Kristen Madler, the Clean Energy Coordinator at the U.S. Agency for International Development, to give some opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. Good morning. My name is Kristen, as Elise mentioned, and I work in USAID's Global Office of Energy and Infrastructure. I would like to give a special thanks to each of the electric power industry leaders for carving out time to share each of your unique perspectives as panelists today. I know you all have been putting in a heroic effort during this unique and really difficult time, and so we really greatly appreciate your time and commitment to join us today. I would also like to thank USEA for organizing this event. A big thanks to Jake and Elise and everyone else on the team who's been involved for their continued commitment to USAID's Energy Utility Partnership Program. As many of you already know, USAID and USEA have been working together for over 25 years to utilize US public and private sector expertise as a critical resource for modernizing developing country power sectors. We consistently hear from our developing country partner utilities that this peer-to-peer engagement is highly valued. With increased numbers of natural disasters in recent years, improving the resilience of energy systems is really essential to utilities and communities. Utilities are under constant threat from acute environmental, medical, geopolitical, or economic shocks. A proactive, future-forward approach to resilience could transform these challenges into a competitive advantage. Utilities that adopt resilient mindsets can proactively enhance their abilities to serve customers, streamline operations, and lower costs. Over the past few months, we've seen that utilities with larger portfolios of renewable energy have been more resilient than those that rely on fossil fuels. So understanding the nuances of power system vulnerabilities and how to finance resilient solution has been a large barrier for implementing resilient systems. Today's panelists will share solutions to challenges and issues that have arisen from various crises. We hope the discussion will help to guide informed, localized decision-making to bolster utility resilience. And this is not a one-way flow of information. In these times, we are all learning from each other as we test solutions in a rapidly changing environment. Our hope is that by coming together to share experiences, we can protect utility revenue streams during difficult times and continue to ensure reliable electricity production in each of our countries. So thank you again for joining today's briefing. enjoy the discussion, and I will give the floor to today's moderator.
Thank you, Kristen. My name is Jim Hicks. I spent 31 years with us as a senior executive with a major utility in the U.S. before retiring and being a consultant now with Mott MacDonald in senior energy issues around the world, most recently providing technical assistance to USEA. It's my pleasure to be your moderator today. Today we have 4 really good speakers. I'm happy to introduce them. They have a wide breadth of experiences from across the world. Our first speaker is George Metaweka, who is Chief Operating Officer at Uganda Electric Generating Company. He has over 10 years experience as a mechanical engineer for hydropower plants and has managed and planned construction for the government of Uganda's flagship power plant, the Karuma 600 megawatt and Ishima 183 megawatt plant. Next, we'll have Rajiv Purwal, who is a Senior General Manager at the Power System Operation Corporation of India. He has in-depth knowledge of regional and national load dispatching centers, grid operations, renewable energy integration, and open access systems. Following that, we'll have Naborja Jovac, who is the Principal Engineer with Energy Coordinating Center in Belgrade, Serbia. He has a vast experience in transmission system modeling and analysis, real-time power system operations and control, and creation of energy procedures for transmission system operators. With an EKC, he has worked on a significant number of power system studies in the regions of the Southeast Europe, Eastern Europe, Middle East, East Africa, and Central Asia. And last and finally, not least, we have Carlos Correa, who is with the Grid Integration Specialist at XM Company, a power system operator in Colombia. He has 14 years experience in the energy industry and has deep understanding of various renewable energy integration and natural gas systems. And with that, I'll turn it over to our first speaker, who is George.
Okay, thank you, moderator, and greetings to everyone. I hope my audio is clear. I'll quickly go through the presentation, which I'm going to share on the screen shortly, just to try and share our experience of this pandemic and what can be done to what we think should be done by ourselves and other utilities to manage and build our resilience in the next coming years or in the future when similar things happen. So these are my table of contents, so I will not spend so much time on that. To some of us who have no idea where Uganda is, this is our location in East Africa, and about 34.6 million people as per the 2014 census. In terms of the energy sector, how we are built up, we are under the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, and we have quite a number of other agencies that are under that ministry. And we, as Uganda Electricity Generation Company, we have some assets which are under concession, and there's some assets which we are operating. And of course, we generate, then we have an independent transmission company, then there is another distribution company that takes off power. In terms of market share, our market share right now stands at 663 megawatts. So in Uganda, we take about 48%. We have other competitors, so to speak, but one is large and the rest are really small. So the energy generation in Uganda is really just coming up to shape. And so because of being a large generator in the country with a lot of power, the pandemic, of course, affected us so much, as we shall discuss. When you look at the statistics in Uganda in terms of consumption, the consumption is still low, but we think we need, by Vision 2040, that means by 2040, we should be somewhere at around 41,000 megawatts of power. And of course, for the size of our country, that should be a big task, a big milestone that we need to achieve. Quickly in terms of our asset location, all our large assets are located on River Nile, and River Nile is the longest in the world, as I understand it, from Lake Victoria here all the way to Egypt. It's one of the longest, it's the longest river in the world. And our assets are located on River Nile. We have Nalubale and Kira, we have Isimba, we have Karuma, and we have some small power plants that are already under construction, which we are doing, and hopefully in the next 2 years, we should be able to commission these. Then we have ambitions to diversify the climate change, as I will show you shortly. With the climate change, we cannot rely on only hydropower. We need to diversify and have other sources of power. We are looking at solar, which we have in plenty because we are located at the equator, geothermal, which we have also not so much compared to our counterparts in Kenya. Then, of course, thermal power, we have some oil discoveries that we have made. We should be able to use that also to generate some extra power. In terms of the main topic is, of course, the pandemic, the COVID. But in Uganda also, we had, during the same period of COVID, we had floods. And we had, just to put it in perspective, the floods that we had, if you look at the graph I'm showing on the screen, the lower graph is the mean of a 3-year average. And if you look at the top graph, the green graph is the graph that we had in 1964. And the red graph is the graph that we are having now in 2020. So we see that we are having more or less a repeat of what happened in 1964, where the lake, the water rose by 1 meter. So you can imagine the impact of the 1 meter rise on the lake shores and on the rivers all over Uganda. And this is our power plant at Owen Falls, as most people used to call it. We call it Nalubale Power Plant. As you can see, the rise of 1 meter dislodged a lot of vegetation from the shores, and they ended up on the power plant. This is the intake of the power plant, and you can see we have a lot of vegetation that came in, and we were battling with this for almost 2 months. And in terms of impact, this is what it does to the machines. The machines get clogged up. The power plant had to be shut down for the entire period. We had to clean up, and this had to be repeated. The floods are not only in Uganda, they are all over the region. This is a picture from Nairobi, from Kenya, and you can see we have, this is one of the tributaries that bring into the lake. It's all flooded up because once the lake rose by 1 meter, the water coming in from other rivers couldn't enter the lake. So they were all flooding backwards in the neighboring states. And as you can see, roads are being cut off. So it has been a big issue for us. So in terms of impact, we see that COVID-19, the pandemic itself has had a much more severe impact compared to the floods. The reason being that the floods were only affecting regional places, and most other places could continue with business. But COVID cut off all the business. So all supply chains, because of lockdowns, we are not able to have anything moving really. People, goods, supplies, nothing. So we found that if we can be resilient against COVID, then being resilient against floods and natural disasters might be much more easier. However, my presentation is going to focus mainly on the impact on business processes, because on the plant, yes, the floods led to the shutdown of the power plants, but in terms of business processes, we were much more impacted by the COVID. And so my focus is going to zoom in on business processes, what was the impact, and what can we do about that. So I decided to look at business processes from different buckets. And the first bucket I looked at is in terms of human resource. My text is a little bit small, but the presentation is going to be shared at the end of this webinar, so everyone will be able to read everything. But what we found that in terms of human resource, we have a lot of tangible effects, tangible impacts, and non-tangible impacts. For example, psychological issues about people being worried. Once the lockdown came in, we had to divide our staff in what is called essential, those who must really move, and those who shouldn't. And that led to people worrying about whether their jobs are secure, how are they going to meet their individual performance targets, etc. Then also we found that really the whole business were not prepared to work from home for most of the people. And this was new, had never been done. So when you tell someone to go and work from home, that was very difficult. People had to find their footing organically, as I put it there. Then we had key staff quarantined at site. We had to get some temporary shelters and make sure the operating staff and maintenance staff and some key service providers are locked up on site. The problem with that was we couldn't have a substitute for families. You find people are longing for their children, they are longing for their loved ones, but there is no substitute for that. So they are either on site and they just have to keep on communicating, but there is something to touch and feel related to individuals. And of course, most things were hiked. We had a lot of hiking of goods, and that led to disposable income going down. And it's meant we also had to incur a lot of costs as a business. And in terms of what can we do about this, perhaps in the future, we think we need to multi-skill all our staff, because we found that if you rely on just a few staff, then you don't have flexibility. We need to flatten our organization so that we can make quick decisions. We need to look at succession of plans. When people get worried about their jobs, perhaps the next thing they might think of another career move. So who is going to replace them? That is very important during this period. So we need to strengthen that. Peer-to-peer collaborations among staff and also among organizations, like what we are doing now. We found it very essential and we relied on that. Of course, working schedules, and as far as management is concerned, managers, we think senior managers and top managers, I think these people, we need to have more coaching skills rather than hands-on or close supervision, so that we coach people, they can do things by themselves without any supervision, whether at home, whether at work. I think that will help to keep productivity high. In terms of finances, we had a lot of, collection was low by 20%. We had commercial losses, a lot of theft increased because with the lockdown, the surveillance on power grids was less, and you had many people connecting. The national band also went down because factories were not producing, also by around 20%. And then we had a big hit on our profitability due to the volatile currency. We have a lot of borrowing in dollars, and this hit our profit and loss statement so bad. We are yet to recover from that. In terms of resilience from this, we think we can have contingencies, but they might not do a lot. We should hedging, if we can try to do some hedging in the future, but hedging is also very expensive. Anyone who has done this knows this, that it's a very expensive venture. Of course, having as many customers on postpaid systems will help to make sure that we prevent a lot of commercial losses. Then, of course, using local currencies in our case, Uganda shilling, to convert these loans. This is something that we have been working on for maybe the last 1 year. But hopefully with this pandemic, we have seen that the impact is so bad that we need to get our shareholders work on this. And for the income loss, perhaps as the last resort, we are already in discussions with the government to see if we can have some subsidy. But of course, this is a bad policy. It's not always good to have government subsidizing utilities. But as a last resort, especially if we have a resurgence in terms of numbers of people who are being affected and more lockdowns come again globally, then we might have to get some bailouts from government. In terms of capital projects, obviously we have delays. We have a lot of staff, the expatriates who have been affected. They were in their home countries, they couldn't make it. A lot of costs are going to be incurred. And we are seeing that we are reprioritizing the budgets, and we shall have finances being diverted to other things. So in terms of completing these capital projects is going to be a big challenge for us because of this impact of COVID. And of course, once you have project delays, this means that the onset of revenue collection is also impacted, which goes back down to your P&L in the coming years. How can we improve on this situation? We think some contingencies, but we also see that in the market, we don't have good deals, should I say, of bridge financing that can help in this crisis period. We saw a lot of investors holding back, and they were not sure what to do. So it's something that we need to work on in the future to see that we have bridge financing for projects to deal with such crises. And of course, we need to look in the future. The ongoing projects might not be impacted by this, but the design of future projects is important to make sure that they are made in such a way that from the way they are, especially due to the construction methodologies, take care of the fact that you might have at one point when you don't have all the skills, when you don't have all the resources you need. So the construction methodologies and the designs have to be robust enough. Where of course, multi-skilling is also important because this goes back to the human resource factor. We are looking at the laws of procurement to deal with crisis, because we are having a lot of force majeure being declared by the contractors. But how do we deal with that? This is a new thing to have at one go, all your subcontractors and main contractors declaring force majeure. How do we go about this? This is something that wasn't foreseen in the contracts, in the contracting period. So it's something that we need to review. And of course, the tariff, the revenues from these projects depends on the tariffs from them. And the modeling has to take care of some of these risks that have emerged, which were during the previous projects would think these are very remote and they should never happen. But we have seen that this is something that we need to take care of in the modeling of the tariffs. Plant operations, of course, the customers, they were expecting reliable power. People were at home. They expected a lot of, they needed reliable power. So we found that reliability of equipment was more important than availability. So we had to defer a lot of maintenance. We needed to make sure that the grid is very stable. So the usual aspects of spinning reserve and other items and system reserves had to be, they were high on the agenda compared to any other CapEx project, so, or any other parameter. Accommodation of staff, this was a big challenge. It was so big that we need a solution actually for it in the future, because most of the other power plants, they never had any contingents of how to keep staff on site and continue operations. Obviously, increasing O&M expenditure, and of course, we have to make sure that we are fully reliant on local capacity instead of expatriates, especially for assets that are concessioned to run with all the emergencies that are coming in, especially like as you've seen in the floods, we had to rely mainly on local staff. Operationally, what can we do on building resilience? Of course, drills, it's one of the ways to make sure the company is aware that something can happen, so to check ourselves internally. So we need a check mechanism built in. We have a lot of ISO 9000 guidelines, and we are certified as ISO guideline, but we don't have such check sheets that can help check a company or a business or a utility that they can withstand such things. Maybe even things like ISO 9000 need to be relooked into. Of course, remote operations to kind of be flexible on staff, emergency preparedness plans, especially in our case where we had a double crisis. You had the pandemic, you had the floods. The usually emergencies, we normally look at them like what is the extreme emergency, but here we had two extreme emergencies happening at the same time, and we had to make sure that we survive. Local capacity, of course, is important on materials for temporary structures. Most of the temporary structures that you can put up are usually imported, or you need to get them from another country. But if the supply chains have stopped, what do? Maybe we start going back to building temporary structures with mud and water or something like that. This is something that we need to look into in the future. And we found that synergies from within other companies, we found that there are so many other businesses, our competitors, they had a lot of material, had a lot of equipment, but we are not aware of it until when we had two crises to run. So you'd find someone tells you, I wish you had told me I had this, you didn't have to hire or something like that. So it's important to work jointly with other utilities and get to know what do they have, what don't they want at a certain time, so that you can utilize that. In terms of ICT, cybersecurity became very important. We know that there are so many people that have a lot of redundant time on their hands all over the world. So security of ICT was high on the agenda, and we found that we had a gap there. We had a lot of demand in terms of ICT facilities. People want to work from home and online things. We had meetings online. Obviously, one of the impacts was that we reduced using printed materials, and that was very good. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And that's kind of helped on helping on such admin costs. And we found that ICT became very, very core. It's no longer just a support function, it's a very main function, it's a core function for the business. So digital transformation, I think there's been many conferences in the past years talking about digital conferences, digitalization, but I think now it's a reality that we need this to transform. Information security has to be very core to every business. Continuity of operations based on ICT is important. And we need to have mobility for almost every business process. Be it finance, be it operations, we need to see how we can improve mobility. So from my iPhone or iPad, I should be able to transact almost 90% of the company business. That is something that we need to do. And of course, security is important. Under the legal, as I begin winding up my presentation, as I've said, we had a lot of force majeure. We had a lot of, we think we are going to have disputes. Perhaps these disputes are going to be in for years, because under such circumstances, how do you adjudicate what is fair for the contractor and what is not fair? This will take us a long time on knowing why did the contractor not finish or on time, things like that. That's going to take us some time. I know that some contract management institutes have set up guidelines how to deal with this, but they are not yet very clear. So we still need clarity in terms of managing claims and disputes from this situation. We are seeing a lot of, we took a lot of emergency actions as management, and some of them could land us into trouble with staff and suppliers because we didn't have any rule book. We are doing things the way they came. So there might have been a risk of increased litigation, and our councils are looking into this. Then insurance, we think that in the coming future that insurers around the world are likely to start excluding the global pandemics. They might have to increase premiums because of this, because no one knew that we would have something like this all over the world. So we are seeing insurers having discussions about what really, how adequately can they cover the clients, and that goes back to premiums of insurance. And regarding to staff, generally human resources, people who have been working from home, how are we going to compensate them, especially when they work long hours to deliver on the business. No one is there monitoring their overtime and other allowances. So how are we going to do this? So it goes back to the contracts that we have with staff, which I also have to be looked into. In terms of resilience in legal processes, we think, yeah, we need to do a risk analysis really, but also in consultation with insurers to see what can we do on these exclusions related to pandemics and such extreme floods. Then of course, we need to see the force majeure events. Usually there is a coordination on force majeure events. You coordinate them in such a way that if a subcontractor or a contractor declares a force majeure, it shouldn't have an upstream impact on your business. But this is usually we do it for large capital projects. But then we are seeing even smaller subcontractors declaring the same, and we need to see that this is well coordinated. So the risk analysis and risk apportioning around force majeure events needs to be improved in the future. Then we need to, of course, review our risk appetite as a utility to see that these two extreme events have set the standard really of what sort of risk can we take on and what we shouldn't take on, what we should pass on to others. This we are going to review. And optimizing employee contractual benefits. This is what we've been talking about. If people are working from home, how do you measure overtime? How do you measure performance? How do you give a fair compensation for someone working from home and someone who's working at office? So we are going to see that in the future, we are going to have a mixed model where people are working from office and others are working from home. And how do we have a fair contracting basis for human resources? We also saw some emerging opportunities, which I want to run through.
Yeah, George, can you wrap it up pretty quickly? Because
yes, this is the last. Slide. Of course, in the emerging opportunities, we saw that we think there are so many sectors that were severely hurt: tourism, hotel, and it's an opportunity because now you have some talent to get as a utility. You can start shopping for human resources now. We saw a lot of stuff, a lot of leadership and teamwork. Of course, these pandemics and extreme floods, we need to engage in new research as a utility in collaborations with academic institutions. The traditional models of management, they are going to change, as I've been highlighting in the business processes. We are going to change this. Of course, there's opportunity to flatten our structures, to make them leaner. Digital platforms, a lot of organizational alliances are going to be the way to go, rather than utilities trying to compete. We need to collaborate much more. And of course, with the lockdown, we saw that there are fewer cars, fewer printing, and this was positive in terms of carbon footprints, that we do not have any, we have reduced on that carbon footprint because of this pandemic. So there is positiveness in this pandemic as well. So that's the end of my short presentation, and I will share it at the end of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, George. What a great presentation. Very thorough and raised a lot of issues. I have some questions, but I'll save those to the end, but I really appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on next to India and Rajiv. So I'll turn it over to Rajiv.
Thank you, Jim, and greetings to everybody. I'm thankful to the USAID for giving this opportunity. I will just talk about Indian power system and how resiliency is being catered here. Just a minute, I will share the screen. If we see the Indian power system, that is one of the largest national synchronous grid. Third, in case of in the entire world, it is the electricity generation, electricity consumption, and installed capacity and transmission system. Fourth in entire world in the wind generation. Fifth in solar generation, and seventh in hydro generation. So it is a really large grid. From the numbers, if we see, we have installed capacity of 370 gigawatt plus. 182 gigawatt plus we are having a peak demand, 4 terawatt hours energy net. Then we have around 425 million circuit kilometers. And then 87 gigawatt plus renewables we have, 10 HVDCs presently in the system, and 100 gigawatts plus interregional capacity. Interregional, we have basically 5 regions in the country. So between the regions, this is 100 gigawatt plus. We have 50,000 plus market participant. We have 2 power exchanges in the country. So this is very unique for the country. And we have around 3 gigawatt plus international exchanges and 3.2 million kilometers of footprint. If we see the structure of Indian power system, basically at policy making, we have the central government, the government, we have federal structure in the country, and power being in the concurrent list. We have regulators at the central level, that is Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. At the state level, similar regulators are there. And at system operation, which is my company, that Power System Operation Corporation, that company runs 6 control centers, 6 load dispatch centers. That is, one is national, and there are 5 regional load dispatch centers. And then there are around 30 state load dispatch centers in the country. They are owned by the state transmission companies. Earlier, this system operation was done by the national transmission company. We were part of that. In 2017, this separate company was formed in POSCO. So we are now presently have a ISO structure. And then there are generation which are government-owned, central government-owned, state government-owned, as well as private sector generation. In transmission, we have central transmission utility, that is government owned. Then each state has a state transmission utility. They are government owned, and we also have private sectors in the transmission. Then we have distribution, state government owned distribution companies as well as private distribution company. And we have, there are a number of trading licenses are there. Then we, as already told, we have 2 power exchanges in the country. So if we see the from the resiliency point of view, we have number of natural disasters in the country. We have unique climate regime in the world, wherein we have 2 monsoon seasons, southwest and northwest monsoon, 2 cyclone seasons, pre-monsoon and post-monsoon. And these cyclones are basically on the both coast. And recently we have a cyclone in the May month during pandemic time on the east coast in the May 20th and 21st May, and then on the west coast on 3rd and 4th June. So even during pandemic time we have these cyclones. So that was very handled very efficiently. And we have hot weather season, so violent precipitation and floods are there, and then there are also dust storms and thunderstorms during these summer months. Then we have cold weather seasons where we have snowstorms in the mountain areas. Jammu Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, all these areas have snowstorms. So again, I'm not going into that. So this presentation will be already available. So how much area is affected by this is given here. Definitely during natural disasters, there is a large scale power infrastructure damage. And we have cyclone, floods, major earthquakes. Then also we have handled efficiently the solar eclipse in December, and on 21st of June, we will be having another solar eclipse. That also we have to handle, because these are important because in view of the large scale solar generation in the country. And almost every year we have cyclones, floods, and earthquakes also. During earthquake, system is having a lot of jolts wherever the units are tripping, somewhere the power transformers are tripping. So we have a lot of difficulties during those periods. And then super cyclone Amphan was recently on 20th May was on the east coast, when the Orissa state and as well as West Bengal states were affected. West Bengal state was majorly affected, and we have loss of around 260 megawatt. Station at 400 kV, 5 stations were affected. They were basically affected means they were totally dark. They were tripped, all the lines, all the circuits trips from those stations. Then we have 11 220 kV lines tripping, and 13 132 kV lines, and 280 plus 33 kV lines tripping in the state of Orissa as well as West Bengal. So they were restored basically quickly, as a 400 kV system were restored on same day itself, except for one substation, which were restored next day. 220 kV and 132 kV also in 2 days they were restored. And if you see that plot of PMU, you will see that how many lines they were impacted, and they were having lot of faults in the system. So 33 kV, 220 kV, 132 kV, 400 kV, and 765 kV, all lines in those areas having the faults. So you just see the impact on the grid. And for the long-term approach of resiliency, we have national level crisis and disaster management plan, which were formulated in 2004, and it is being updated every year, and new things are basically this provides guidelines for assistance utilities, what need to be done. It covers planning, how to quick responses they are recover from unexpected events and situation, ensuring safety of people and protection of environment, protection of installation, restoration of power supply by utilities. And for the power sector, National Load Dispatch Center is the nodal agency for the system operation. At an operational level, we have, for the cyclone, we have to disseminate the trajectory and timing of landfall of these cyclones. And then what are the lines, basically infrastructure coming in that trajectory. That is very important. So we beforehand know that which of the substation, which of the lines can get affected. And accordingly, plans are being made that how to reduce their line loadings, how to do the unit commitment and rescheduling of generation in that particular area, so that even if certain lines or substations go out, either we can supply to those areas, or even if supply is out, then we have to restore it quickly when the storm is over. So therefore, where are the ERS, emergency restoration systems, tower has to be located, they has to be transported, and the manpower which who can take care of this emergency situation, where there has to be posted, and that emergency response team at system operator level, NLDC, RLDC, and SLDC, they are also to be activated. Then market can be curtailed during those periods, and advanced plans put and communicated to everybody for the implementation. And then visualization through phasor measurement units has been one of the major steps in knowing that wherever, which areas are having, which lines are having issues, and which areas are having issues, or where there is a crisis condition, or where voltages are going up or down. So all these things can be visualized very fast and action taken accordingly in the real time. Basically, for the logistics and coordination during these is the recovery equipment and spares. Already I have explained in the earlier slide, but just for, I will go quickly. Then financial resources, mobile digital generator sets, if there is a possibility that supply will not be there for long duration. Then black start facilities are very important, so that even if we are out, then we can revive the system quickly. And for the transmission system also, how we can reach quickly to the thermal generating station where startup power supply has to be extended. So all those things are also being planned at a planning level itself. So from the planning level, we have strengthening of say transmission tower, cyber security measures, vegetation management, plant maintenance, selective undergrounding of cabling wherever we feel that these areas are prone to cyclones or such situation. Then we are from overground, we are going underground. There are issues for the voltage control extra, but we are doing that. Then emergency restoration systems, where are to be located, and where from where they can be easily transported to the areas, and the recovery equipment and manpower inventories. Then system recovery is that assessment is done quickly, movement of restoration, equipment and materials, and then satellite-based area assessment and communication system. All these things are being done. Again, for future, we will have to move around that, say, grid forming type of inverters when large amount of solar or wind generation will be coming. So we will have to move from the grid following inverters to grid forming inverters, so that we can have restoration from these areas also, which is presently from the gas-based stations as well as hydrogenating station. They are major source for black start, but in future we have to plan for the inverter-based stations also. So we are enhancing power system resiliency in all sectors: generation, transmission, and distribution. Again, due to paucity of time, I will not go into details, but definitely you can go. As far as this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic is concerned, we have 22nd of March, we have a Janta curfew, wherein Honorable Prime Minister of India called for a Janta curfew. In the entire country, there was almost lockdown in the entire country. It was voluntary lockdown in the country. And then from 25th March to 31st May, we have lockdown in the entire country. And from 5th April, we have this 9 p.m. 9-minute events. So I will go into these details slightly afterward. Then how we have handled this pandemic at the control centers at the system level. We have devised again everywhere that personal hygiene, work from home, we have to maintain social distancing, travel advisory, no travel from anywhere, all the meetings, everything has to be done through video conferencing or these webinars, nothing through travel. travel has to be minimized as much as possible. Then again, teleworking, we are working from home number of times. A number of operators are working from home. Then keep object and surface clean. So we are, say in a day, we are cleaning entire control room 2-3 times a day. Sanitization is being done. And then there are on a weekly or 2-3 days basis, we have fumigation of the entire office buildings. Then strategic oversight and tactical teams has been made in the organization, which see overall on a daily basis. They have a chat, video conference, and discuss about any issues arising in anywhere in the country as far as the system is concerned. And then critical staff for core function has been identified. Some of the has been allowed to work from home, and some whoever has to come in the office, again, they have been provided the facility to have a transport to coming for, so that they do not use any public transport. Either they have to come from their own vehicles, or the organization is providing them a dedicated transport. Then health monitoring and control room staffs is being done. And then we have also, apart from, we have basically these 5 control center, we have also backup control center. But what we have done during this emergency situation, we have also created temporary control room in the same building with the separate gate. So even if they say during fumigation of the control room, we can operate from the temporary control room, or if any eventuality happens, anybody get tested positive, then we can move to the temporary, other staff can come and they can start function from the temporary control room. Then definitely cyber security is important, because people are working from home, so they have to be given certain access, not all the critical access they have not to be given, but certain access they need to be given, but that has to be securely secured. We are having continuous interaction with the state load dispatch center, regional load dispatch center, and also the neighboring countries. Identification of reserve manpower, roster is being prepared accordingly, so that nobody is put in the control room staff control room duty continuously, so that nobody feels that they are being discriminated, and also they have proper emotional connect. Then again, load forecasting, when this lockdown was to be lifted, or when the lockdown was being implemented, how much demand variation is likely to happen, so that all these things were done. And plant maintenance, because of COVID-19 situation, there were less plant maintenance during this lockdown period, and which now there will be more basically request for the maintenance. So all again, entire working is being done, so that they are being properly channelized. So there is nothing very serious during this. And the fuel stock monitoring, basically fuel stock is surplus nowadays, there is no issue on that. And then transmission capability and security is to be maintained. We have during Janta curfew around 20 gigawatts of load difference. So this basically mainly was the commercial load. We can all say that, because industry were running during that period, agriculture was almost there, and only the commercial loads was out, and slightly residential load was up because people were at home. During this lockdown period, if we see, we have around 20 to 30% reduction in energy as well as peak demand level. But slowly this has picked up because of picking of agriculture load in the country. And then in the end of May around, we were almost normal. But again, because of this West Coast cyclone, we have a lot of rains in West Coast, as well as in certain other part of the country, we have rains. So therefore, demand again reduced. But again, during this time, after 7th and 8th June, we have again picked up, the demand has picked up, and almost we are at the same level as were last year, definitely slightly lower than that. If in normal circumstances, we would have been around 4 to 5% higher than the last year, but currently we are lower than the last year demand, but slowly we are picking up. On the 9 p.m., basically this 9-minute events, this happened on the 5th of April. In this, Prime Minister gave a call that all the people in the country has to switch off their lights, only lights, not other equipment, has to be switched off for 9 minutes. And this was from all of the country, all regions, all the states, it was followed. And we have around 31 gigawatts of load drop in a few minutes, and again picking up of these demand. The rate of variation was around has gone up to 4,000 megawatt per minute, and during restoration it was 3,000 megawatt plus per minute. This was a higher ramp rate. So this was managed effectively through the hydro generation basically, as well as hydro, and then gas generation, and then some of the wind generation we have curtailed during that period. So
Rajiv, we've got two other speakers, so if you could wrap it up pretty quickly.
I'm just so we have around higher hydro generation. We have kept scheduled higher generation 22% higher than the previous day, and during this event there was reduction because hydro is very reliable, as well as very ramp is quite high, so therefore we have used effectively it. And then during this period basically we have costly generation has reduced, so there is reflected in the lower market prices in the market, and incentive for flexibility. Again, the Central Commission has said that ramping has to be incentivized, so we have now mandated that all thermal stations at least should have 1% ramping capability, and they have to, basically they are having capability, they have to declare that, so that that can be scheduled, that can be utilized. And then focus is on, because of this 9 p.m. 9 minutes events, the focus is on hydro generations and pump storage, so that we have, if such events happen, and basically for the good integration of renewables in future, we will have more focus on the hydro generation. And we have, during this pandemic time also, we have started real-time market, so that all the distribution companies and generators can benefit from that, and they have better portfolio management. Then we have also expanded from the 1st of June the security constrained economic dispatch, when any generator in the country can participate in the this mechanism. And then Renewable Energy Management Center has also started for the better scheduling and better management of the renewable generation. And then Government of India has also intervened and given support for this pandemic time. And some of the distribution companies will get benefited out of that. With that, I will stop here, and thank you again for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. Excellent presentation, and again brings up a lot of questions. We're going to move on to Naborsha, and we're running a little late, but please take your time on your presentations. We'll move in, if we take some of the other Q&A, that's fine. These are great presentations, and I think people need to hear them. So, Naborsha.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jim. Hello to everyone. Today, I will focus on two emergency situations that happen in southeastern Europe. And from these situations, you can see all the lessons that we learned and how to increase the utility resilience here in the region. I must say that all these aspects and the emergency situations are coming from system operation perspective, taking into account that taking into account that our company EKC is a company that is founded by electric power utilities, electric power enterprises of Serbia, Macedonia, Montenegro, and one power utility in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And after the regulation, we are now, our owners are now transmission system operators and also market operators here in the region. So we are involved in all these system operation activities here in the region. In addition to this, EKC was our primary activity was to coordinate and control the electric power systems in Southeastern Europe. So maybe some of you know that we were at that point of time during 90s and until 2004, we were coordination, security and accounting center for so-called second synchronous zone, which at that point of time were separated from the rest of Europe. Now EKC is a consultancy company that provides technical assistance and different kind of services in the area of power system control, system operation, transmission, distribution also, and generation development, electricity market. Okay, let's focus on these two emergency situations and to see what we can extract from this, what we can learn from these situations. So just briefly, focus is on Serbia, and you can see that power sector in Serbia, practically our total installed capacity of generation is around 7,600 megawatts. And you can see that, which is something that is important for the further presentation, for the rest of the presentation, that we rely more than 50% on thermal, on coal-fired generation here in Serbia. And on the right side, you can see transmission system map of Serbian power system. Recently, we started to introduce and integrate wind capacities in the region. Nowadays, we have around 5%, but in the next 5 to 10 years, I think that capacity will increase to up to 20 or 25% of total installed power. So here, this is the situation that happened in 2013. It was the heaviest rain in 120 years of how we recording weather measurements. And the total damage in Serbia, only in Serbia, was at that point of time 1.5 billion of euros in different areas. During this flooding period, around 300,000 households were left without electricity, but not due to problems and lack of shortage of power. It was mainly because of the floods and because distribution companies deliberately disconnect certain substations and transformer stations in order to save lives. What was characteristic at that point of time was that the flood water filled the largest coal field in the area of Obrenovac, in the area where practically it was around 210 million of cubic meters of water that entered into the largest coal field. And you can see on a picture below that on this circle, a red circle, that this is the place where this is the, I would say, the major, it's the heart of our power system. The major substations are and the major production facilities are located. So at that point of time, we practically had a shortage of more than 2,000 megawatts in the one particular moment. In addition to water that filled the coal field, we also have had a damage of mining equipment. Coal railway also was damaged. So there was a really tension. There was really a difficult situation. And in addition to all of this, water also penetrated into the major 400 kV substation where our coal-fired units are connected. And you can see that this is the practically, I would say, the most significant substation in our system. So, as I said, in one point of time, in 1 hour, we had over 1,000 megawatt of thermal capacities unavailable. Plus, in addition to this, because it was a spring period, and additionally 1,500 megawatt was also in a regular maintenance period. On the other hand, due to such a high level of water, major hydro facilities opened their gates in order to lower the level of the river. So we lost additional 500 megawatts. At that point of time, you can see that all these floods were happened in Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Croatia. And I would say the heaviest situation was in Serbia. So we, at that point of time, because we lost so many generation capacity, this shortage of power was covered at that point of time from the neighboring system. And that is practically, you can see the benefits of the large interconnections such as exist in Europe. So, as I said, there was no load shedding in non-flooded areas. So we managed to supply all the consumers at that point of time. So the defensive measures that were applied in that particular case were preventive disconnection of distribution substations in order to save lives and cut off the electricity in that particular period. What we also did is voltage reduction in distribution network in order to decrease total power in the system and to go through the peak loads that were happened at that point of time. As I said, we relied mostly on Bulgaria, Bosnia and Herzegovina, also Romania, all of our neighbors that imported emergency electricity to Serbia. And we had this crisis headquarters 24/7. So we engaged the most experienced dispatchers to work in the shift because really it was proven that that experience and capability to manage such emergency situation was very, very important at that point of time. Another situation that happened was extreme winter in 2012. This was really, really extreme weather conditions during this winter, and the temperature were shooting up to minus 30 degrees Celsius with very strong wind. So what happened is that on our main river that we are using for cooling our pumps, ice showed up. So suction pumps were clogged at that point of time. So then also coal mining was reduced to less than 70% of planned amount. And in addition to this, we had a record of daily consumption in Serbia in that it was not only in Serbia, it was really very heavy winter in the whole region. So at that point of time, it was difficult to rely on emergency energy from neighboring countries because
George, I mean, Dvorak, we've lost you.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So practically, in addition to all these troubles, coal railway collapsed due to these low temperatures, and the situation in the region was that all countries were using. There were no willing transactions throughout the countries. So it was really difficult situation in this winter. It was in 2012. So now, as a last slide, I would just briefly go through these lessons learned. So, to our mind, after all these emergency situations that we, sorry, let me just say something about this pandemic situation regarding COVID. So, regarding system operation, there were no issues. The only issue was very high voltages on extra high voltage side. The voltage were in some parts of the region were reached the values of 450 on 400 kV level, and normal range is from up to 420. So it was really difficult situation because of such a low demand and low reactive power demand, especially due to closing down of the industrial facilities, and that happened in the whole Europe. So it was really difficult. So we need to disconnect certain lines, major lines, in order to decrease voltages, but this was the only difficulty that we experienced from system operation point of view. So to go back to lessons learned, it was recognized that really a detailed system defense plan needs to be prepared in advance, and system defense plan which should comprise all the I would say less probable contingencies, studies of less probable contingencies that can happen in the system, so to prepare mitigation actions in advance. It was recognized, you saw that in both emergency situations we had problems in a part of the system where we have around 2,000 megawatts located in coal-fired and lignite-fired production facilities. So we realized that non-centralized production portfolio is quite important. So practically then we start to invest more in distributed generation. Third thing is increasing of capacity of coal landfills in case when we have these damages of railways, coal railways, and damages of the equipment in mining fields. Fourth aspect is really important, and this is continuous training of dispatchers, especially for such a kind of emergency situation, because we realized that younger dispatchers are not so capable to cope with emergency situations like this. Also, investments in demand response in order to decrease demand and to actively influence the level of demand in the system, especially in the cases when we have a shortage of power. And last but not the least, it's a short and medium term adequacy forecast. Remember that we were speaking about, in both cases we had a shortage of power, so it was recognized that really we should do right now we are doing, or yeah, right now we are doing this system adequacy forecast on the year ahead level, but it should be done also on a month ahead and week ahead, in order to determine, taking into account a really realistic forecast of the hydrology and realistic forecast of the weather conditions, in order to check whether some utility will have shortage, will have problems with system adequacy, with problems with supplying consumers and so on. So these are the main aspects that we learned from these emergency situations. So,
thank you, Borja. I tell you, 2020 has been, seems like it's affected everybody. So with that, we're going to move on to Carlos. Carlos, I appreciate your patience in getting to you, and apologize for running over, but we're going to dispense with the Q&A. If you can just wrap up yours by about 28 after, so we can have a few closing comments, I'd appreciate it. So Carlos, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm Carlos from Colombia. I work for XM. XM is the Colombian system operator and market administrator. The idea of my presentation is to share you some experiences we have had in the Colombian system that has helped us to improve our system resilience. Basically, some main characteristics of Colombia. Our transmission system is composed of lines between 500 kV to 110 kV. It connects the whole country from the south to the north, as you can see in the left picture. There are some regions that are not interconnected, but it is because is the jungle there. 98% of the people is connected to the transmission network. We have some connections with our neighbors, with Ecuador and Venezuela. We trade energy with Ecuador in a daily basis, but with Venezuela, we haven't been trading for the last 10 years or so because of basically political decisions. Talking about demand and generation, our yearly demand is about 68,000 gigas. Our peak demand is 10 gigas. We have an installed capacity of 17.5 gigas. Basically, most of it is hydro generation, almost 11 gigas. And the remainder is thermal generation, about 5 gigas. We have 1.5 of variable generation. Most of this generation is hydro, small hydro units. Currently, we don't have much wind or solar, but this situation is changing rapidly. We are expecting to integrate these technologies into our system. And for the year 2023, we are expecting to have 7.5 gigas of solar and wind installed into the system. So the way we operate and we plan the system must change for the coming years. Talking about resilience is very important to define resilience, because sometimes resilience and reliability are like mixed. Resilience is like the measure to quickly anticipate, prepare, and adapt for changing conditions and endure and recover from events of low probability and high impact. And that's different from reliability, when you take care of the adequacy and security and are those events that happen on maybe a daily basis and have a very low impact. When we start studying resilience, is very common to associate resilience with natural events, such as those that has been shared by other colleagues. For example, extreme weather conditions and events like those. But it's important to take into account that those low probable and high impact events can also become from other sources, for example, from technology or for human interaction. So my presentation is gonna give you some examples of how the Colombian system resilience has been tested from events of different nature. When we analyze resiliences, it's very important to take into account that the system operational condition is gonna change, and it's gonna change for a long period of time, depending on the event. So we evaluate the system pre-contingency state, the post-contingency state, and how the state can recover from that post-contingency. And that recover might be evaluated in two different stages. The first one is like an operational stage, in which the idea is to keep the lights on, and finally to recover the infrastructure that were compromised from the event. And those measures that can be taken during all this time can be classified in two different categories. One is those related with infrastructure, that is how we recover or we install more devices regarding generation, distribution, transmissions, and those. And those associated with processes and the human resource, because it's really important to take into account that infrastructure is not the only part of the equation. We have another very relevant part that must be taken into account to ensure appropriate resilience, appropriate recovery. Well, the first event that I want to share with you is regarding some extreme weather events in Colombia. We are exposed to El Niño or La Niña phenomena. El Niño is a dry season and La Niña is a wet season. Remember that our installed capacity is basically hydro. So when we have El Niño, our operating conditions are very extreme. The challenge here is how we optimize the system operation, taking into account that El Niño and La Niña are phenomena that are very difficult to forecast, especially now where the climate is changing rapidly. And as we can see in the left pictures, for the last 20 years, these kind of events have been happening in a pattern that is difficult to categorize. The blue squares show La Niña phenomena, and the red squares show where El Niño happened. The black line represents the mean of the hydro inflows, while the green line represents market prices. As you can see here, during El Niño in 2015, the market prices increased to an extreme that the market operation and administration was really compromised. What have we learned from these events? That is really important to plan the system considering stochastic optimization and maybe some simulations for taking into account some deterministic scenarios. For example, when you solve the stochastic optimization, then you can simulate what could happen if one of those historic events would happen again. In our company, we have implemented some processes that are in charge to continuously follow up what is happening with the weather, and we have to train people in order to forecast those kind of events. And it has been really helpful for us to face these dry or wet seasons to increase our regional interconnection capacity. Because, for example, when in Colombia is a dry season, it's common that in Ecuador they have a wet season, so we can complement each other. The other event that I want to share with you today is what has happened with some hydro resources in our system. During that El Nino phenomena, when the prices increased drastically, we lost our main hydro unit that is called Guatapé. That Guatapé is the dam with the greatest regulating capacity. So we spent the winter saving water there in order to use it in the dry season, but because of a fire during a maintenance in the powerhouse, we lost the unit. We were not able to produce energy, obviously, with that unit, and the water that we stored in the dam, in the reservoir, sorry, was stored there, and we weren't able to use it. Another event occurred during the year 2018. We are building right now the Ituango plant. Is gonna be the largest unit with an installed capacity of 2,400 megawatts. The idea is that this unit started to produce energy back in 2019, but during the project, some diversion tunnels were clogged. The engineers had to let the water flow through the powerhouse that was unfinished in order to balance the flow of the river. That obviously delayed all the project. The project is expected to start producing now in the year 2021 or 2022. And the problem there was that the energy for the coming years was seriously compromised. Some actions taken from these experiences, first of all, the importance of have a planning process based on scenarios. We started to implement some flexibility analysis since the mid and the long term in order to take actions that allow the system to be more flexible. The policy development is key. Back in that El Nino phenomena in 2016, when the prices were really high, instead of rationing, the government placed a regulation that incentivized the people to save energy. That people that could show that was saving energy get some subsidies, and that really worked for reducing the demand. For this Ituango's event, what the government did was to put some actions in place. We have now 2.5 gigawatts of solar and wind that are going to be installed between this year and the next year. And this is gonna help us to overcome the energy situation that we could have because of the Ituango's event. And finally, there is a new regulation for integrating storage that we currently don't have in Colombia, but is gonna help us to increase the system flexibility. Another event is regarding human actions. Sadly,
Carlos, if you could wrap this up in about a minute, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, we had some terrorist attacks to the Colombian transmission system infrastructure that at the end of the 90s and at the early 2000s that have made us to change and to adapt our planning and operational processes to deal with these attacks. And finally, I had some reflections about how we have been operating during this COVID crisis, but I think that the first presentation covered this topic very, very well. I want to close the presentation with some actions that Colombia has been implemented to deal with, to get a more resilient system. The first of this is to have an integrated action plan. You must involve all the utilities and all the entities of the country to be able to build resilience. And you have to, in XM, we have changed all the processes and systems that we have in the company in order to deal with this kind of events. Finally, some things to ponder, and I want to finish my presentation with this question: that who pays for resilience? Resilience is associated with events of low probability but high impact, and right now I think that we haven't found the way of how to measure resilience and how to build projects and create plans that solve resilience, because they are usually really expensive for this kind of events. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carlos. Great presentation and a great wind-up. One of the questions I had was, are the regulators and the management of utilities that all y'all deal with, are they willing to step up for the cost it's going to take and the resources to address these issues? And we can take a couple of minutes here, even though we're kind of at the end of our deadline, to, if anybody wants to take a charge at that question. And Carlos, what are you seeing in Colombia as far as regulators and management standing up to the issues that you raised and supporting the changes that have to be made?
Yes, it's a tough discussion. Most of the actions that we have implemented has been reactive instead of being proactive. So we are in exam. What we usually do is that we propose to the regulator how to proceed to solve different problems that we are seeing. And we have been proposing regulations about how to integrate storage, how to modify our codes to integrate renewables, for example, right now, that are like more tangible things. But those regarding, for example, building new infrastructure to get a more resilient network has been really difficult to get, because they are expensive and it's really difficult to support the need for those projects in a low probable and event. So it's difficult, but we've been working on that.
Thank you. George, any comment on how you're dealing with your regulators and government on the resources it takes and also your internal management?
Yes, I really want to agree with Carlos. What we have seen as of now in our country is reactionary. In fact, in many cases, the utilities, the different companies were more ahead in terms of action plans and what needs to be done more than the regulators. However, what we saw is that the regulator took it in good faith, and I think they are taking time to really look at it from the whole economy, how it reacted. Because we see that at a physical level or at a national level, there is the way the economy reacted, and all those impacts have to be taken into consideration before the regulator finally prioritizes to say, okay, I think I'm going to allow more resources on this type of intervention or the other type of intervention. This is what we are seeing, and especially in Uganda, we are coming into an election cycle. This further complicates the whole physical budgeting and planning. And so we are seeing a lot of unknowns and uncertainty. So I think the regulator is stepping back a bit to take stock first at how is the economy catching up, which sectors of the economy are coming back to life, which sectors of the economy have we damaged, has the pandemic or the floods damaged, so that then they can say, okay, based on this, we are going to allow this type of resource in the tariff, or we are disallowing this. So we still work in progress. We have a working committee that has been set up at a national level. It's more like a three-level kind of working committees. We have committees at a ministry level where all the utilities, we sit every Thursday, every week, and we are discussing risks, we are planning, we are, we are just being candid, gloves off. What do we do who is having adequate data, who should do more analysis. Then we have another committee at the Prime Minister's level. They are looking largely at the whole economy, because you can say, okay, let's make adjustments to the tariff, but there are so many people who are not able to afford payments right now because they have lost work. They cannot, look after their own families, let alone pay for the bills. So how do we deal with that? Then we have at a cabinet level a committee chaired by still the Prime Minister, but really more or less like the President, trying to also look at the economic impact and see how we can plan for that. So these plans are always going on every week. All the subcommittees are sitting and looking at what to do and what not to be done. So that's what will finally inform the decision that will be taken by the regulator.
Thank you, George. Rajiv, anything to add from India's standpoint?
Regarding the regulators, basically they are taking quite keen interest, and if any proposal goes to regulator wherein it is required for the country, they are quite open to those things, and they are always helpful to the system operator when we give good analysis to them that this is the problem and this need to be done for future. So it is already there, and even government pushes for a lot of reforms in the sector, and there is a quite good amount of basically move towards the market-oriented economy in the even the electricity sector. So many things are being introduced from the market perspective, as well as also recently you might have heard that there is a coal sector also. There has been commercial mining has been allowed, so there will be a lot of trading on those platforms also, and there will be a lot of our import of say imported coal could be reduced. Basically during this pandemic time, a lot of imported coal has drastically reduced, and it may further improve because of good competition within the country, and then we will also be taking off improvement in the renewable integration in the country. So there are a lot of happenings taking place as far as regulatory perspective is concerned in the country.
Devosh, did you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
So regarding Europe, I would say that we have in Europe for each project in transmission system we have criteria for technical resilience and flexibility. So that is I would say a bonus for benefits of each project, and regulators are considering this when they approve certain projects. And but overall picture is, I would say that if we speak about Southeast Europe, prices of tariff is quite low here in the region, so I would not expect possibilities to increase the tariff because just to increase resilience of the system in I would say next 5 to 10 years for sure. So we need to stick with our own tools and predictions and system defense plans in order to cope with these emergency situations. And maybe just we can buy some additional software tools in SCADA as an addition to SCADA EMS systems for better prediction and better better monitoring of the system issues.
Thank you. 4 excellent presentations. I've got a page and a half of questions I wish we had time to get to, but we're not going to do it. And so I want to thank the 4 presenters, and I'll turn it over to Elise.
Great. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you from our speakers who took the time today. We got a global perspective from almost every continent, and I really appreciate the amount of detail you went into in analyzing the differences between how utilities are reacting to, say, extreme weather events versus how they had to react to a pandemic. It was a very interesting comparison, and it provides us with a great understanding of how we can go forward to become more resilient. So I would like to thank the audience. Thank you for joining us for this webinar on global utility resilience. We will be posting a recording of this webinar on our website with the PowerPoint presentations and some reports as well that the speakers are willing to give for additional detail. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week.